Welcome back, guys. Second video in the Taking It Serious series. And I wanted to start doing what I've seen a few other PC guys on YouTube doing, and that's an of the month PC. Now, I don't have $1,000, $1,200 every month to go out looking, so what we're going to do is we are going to build computers such as that every month using whatever I can find laying around for a reasonable price. And once we get a few of them sitting around, maybe we'll do a giveaway or something. Who knows? So this is technically February/March's PC of the month because as it's just now starting, it's relevant. But let's just dive into it, shall we? Sitting behind me is a Thermaltake P3 case. You've seen it in a lot of different videos. A lot of different builds have been on it. I did a Ryzen build on it. I've done an X99 build on it. I've done an i3 build on it. And currently what it has is an i5. And obviously we'll do a little bit of B-roll as we go along as well, so you can see those shots as we talk. As you can see, it is a water-cooled AIO. It's using a Corsair H100, but if you look at the radiator, you'll notice that it's been painted. I did that because I wanted to add a little bit more red into the system. I'm a sucker for red and black. I really am. I really like it. In fact, I'm thinking about painting the case black, possibly even gunmetal. Gunmetal, black, and red are my favorite colors when it comes to computers, computer components, things of that nature. I don't know if I'm going to paint the Thermaltake black because number one, painting a case never looks as good as it could. And secondly, Project Hamilton, which is over there, is already black and red. And a lot of the components that are on there will eventually migrate over there as I replace these parts. Eventually, I want Project Hamilton to be the computer that gets built up the most over time. Kind of like when a manufacturer introduces a new car in their lineup, what they always do is they start with a low-end car. Used to be the Corolla was the smallest, and then they brought in the Yaris, and then the Corolla becomes the next tier up vehicle. Well, that's what's happening with Project Hamilton. Project Hamilton right now has an i3-2120, but when I replace the computer that's behind here, and we'll get to the specs in a second, those guts will go into Hamilton. Hamilton will go into another computer, which will replace my HTPC, and then, you know, we'll just keep upgrading Hamilton, and eventually Hamilton will be done, and I won't be upgrading that one anymore, and we'll start a new one. Fair enough. Let's get into this computer. As you can see, it's cable managed the way I like it, which is rough. So as you can see here, it's on a Dell proprietary board. I talked about it briefly in the last video, and that is out of an Optiplex 7010 system. I had the opportunity to buy a Z77 Extreme mini ITX board, but those things are like that big and they only have 2 RAM slots, so I passed on that. And for $20, I got an i5 3470, the motherboard, the case, hard drive, RAM, optical drive, everything, and I intend to repurpose the case at some point. I think I'm going to actually do the reverse of putting a computer inside of a gaming case. I'm going to put a gaming console inside of a computer. And handling the graphics on this computer is an EVGA GeForce GTX 670. I've actually had this card for a while, but it's been in my father's computer, his AMD build, because he's waiting for the 1060 he ordered to come in because of graphics, you know, people buying them all up. He got a deal on it, but they haven't sent it yet. And I traded him my 1030 for now because I like to overclock, and you can overclock a 670 farther than you can a 1030, and this will actually outperform a 1030, so when it's overclocked anyways. Now you may be looking at this computer and going, hey, wasn't there a water cooler on that graphics card last video? No, the graphics card that was in there last month was this one, a GTX 580 Hydrocopper 2. It's a EVGA for the win. It's a good card, but it is a 580. This is a 670. It's a faster card, and I like it better. And I'm water cooling that card with this radiator, which I also matched to this radiator so that when I put them both in there together, they'll match. But this card I got for almost nothing, and I sold it for more than I paid for it. It's actually going away tomorrow. I'm sending it out tomorrow. I sold it on the eBays, and I got 60 bucks for it, and I paid a stick of RAM for it. A gentleman was on OfferUp and he had this advertised, and he said he wanted a stick of DDR4 so he can get his computer running. He had I guess a i7 that needed DDR4, and he didn't have the RAM, so I gave him a stick of RAM for this. And the stick of RAM came out of a system that I picked up for $40. So technically I own this for $40, and technically I made $20 selling it, and I kept the radiator, the reservoir, the pump, and the tubing. So part of the tip for you, save money, buy more than you need, sell what you don't. For power, it is using an EVGA 850BQ. It is an 80 plus bronze unit, and it's more than enough power for what I do. I was using it to run two 970s in SLI that I got off of a guy on OfferUp again with an X99 system. I got rid of the X99 system, and yeah, I kept the power supply. For storage, I have two 1 terabyte Western Digital Blues and a 128 gig SSD from SanDisk. I think it's SanDisk. It's the black one. It's what's filling in. It looks like it's blank, but there's actually a hard drive there. Because I still use optical media, I opt for an LG Slim DVD writer or whatever, just because it's USB powered. You don't have to run a SATA cable to it. You can take it wherever, and you know, I just let it sit on top of the power supply and it blends in beautifully. That's my basic setup. So let's go over the cost of this build, and you'll see why parts hunting is the way to go for the future. Starting with the computer. Again, that was a Dell Optiplex 7010 that I got for $20 complete. The RAM is 16 gigabytes of DDR3 1866 megahertz. It's Corsair Vengeance, which I got with the GTX 770 in another video. I would probably say that I paid $20 for the RAM, although your replacement cost would probably be closer to $80 for a 16 gig kit. The water cooler is an H100 from Corsair. I think it's a V2 or a V1, I'm not sure. It's the one that uses the USB as well as SATA and a fan controller. And that averages, you know, again, you'll pay around $50 to $60, but I paid $30 when I bought a case, which is the case over there, and I got all that money back. The hard drives, the only one I actually paid for was the SSD, and I paid $40 for that a long time ago. The power supply is an 850 watt BQ semi-modular power supply. If you were to duplicate that, you'd be spending somewhere around $80 to $100 depending on what the sales are. The GTX 670, I got that for $40. A couple was going to try to use it for mining and decided it didn't have enough RAM on it, and come on, who really uses a 670 for mining? That doesn't make sense. I wish they had two of them because I would have bought both of them. That would have been nice to have those in SLI because, yeah, they're 670s, but they perform well. And let's see, what else is on here? That's about it. Oh yeah, the DVD writer was 20 bucks. If you go to buy these fans, these are Corsair AF120 fans. A 2-pack of those is going to run you about 30 bucks. I got those for free again when I bought the NZXT case, but we'll say those are worth about 30 bucks. So all told, I have about $260 into this system, full stop. A lot of the parts I'll reuse as time goes on because I have several 500 and 600 watt power supplies that will run these lower end graphics cards. It's just I didn't want to put one on this case. I like the P3. I am going to get another P5 because a P5 will allow me to run a 480 rad, and then I can water cool the entire loop, which is my end intention, and that would be nice. Otherwise, let's go ahead and power this thing on and we will see what kind of number she performs. So as she's booting up, let me talk you through a couple of the issues you run into when you do what I did. Now, you could easily just leave your system intact, especially if you get a full desktop version of the Optiplex, which has enough room for a different power supply and a graphics card. But because I wanted to use a better graphics card and a bigger power supply and everything, I had to move everything over. When you do that, you lose your front I/O connector because it's proprietary. You lose your power switch, although you technically can just use, and this is on most Dell boards, inside the power button area, there's a set of jumpers. Just move it to the far left too, and that will enable the power button to be used. I'm not sure if the hard drive lights are connected in there as well. I think they are. But yeah, you have to do that. You can bypass that. Usually It's easier on an open air test bench setup like this because when you turn on the power supply, it automatically starts the computer. Fans are another big problem. Let me see if I can zoom in on one of the controllers. Yeah, if you see right here, this is one of the fan controllers for the motherboard. It's a 5-pin PWM style, and obviously there's no standard fan that would fit on there. I could go ahead and break off all the pieces and then wind up with a kludged together setup that would damage the board potentially, but I don't want to do that obviously. For my keyboard, I just use a pretty standard Corsair K70 Strafe mechanical keyboard, backlit, Cherry MX Reds, and it works great. It's fine. The lettering is much bigger than it is on the Razer that I used to use, but that's okay. At least this one has a numpad. So let's go ahead and we will jump in here, and I'm going to run a Cinebench run so you can see what a bone stock 3470 can do. Now I do apologize about the filming it directly off the screen method that I'm using, but that's because I don't have my other monitor set up right now, and OBS would actually slow down this processor as opposed to the X99. Being a 4-core 4-thread processor means it's not going to be lightning fast, but it will be on par with a lot of lower end systems that are out there. As you can see from these results, the i3-2120, which is a dual-core 4-thread processor, runs at about a 270. This computer, I know it runs actually higher than that. I've had it running higher than that. It's probably just in its boot up process right now, but did about a 438 this time. Last time it did a 464. I just didn't save the run. One of the downsides to this motherboard is that I cannot overclock it like I could the 860. If you see here, an overclocked 860 was doing about a 5.88 versus a AMD quad-core Ryzen 3 overclocked to almost 4 gigahertz was only able to do a 577. So yes, this is slower because it's on a locked board, but it's plenty for a lot of minor things. And I'm actually going to show you a few programs running so you can see what a $20 computer can do for you. One thing I will point out is you can hear it. This thing is quite loud because I have to keep the fan ramped up to keep the temperature sane, and by sane I mean under 75 degrees. That may not sound like a lot to you guys, but to me, yeah, it really is. Another little tip, something I do is I just take an extra fan and I just lay it down here on top of the card. And on aftermarket cooling solutions, it's usually not required, but since this is an old school blower style, it gets a little hot. So this will cool the back of the card as well as cool the crappy VRMs that are on the stock motherboard. It just increases its ability to run a little bit better. So I forgot, when you one screen OBS, you got to click on another thing, otherwise it just records a blank screen, which it did to me. Oops, but I'll just recap what happened. In CSGO, this computer averages about 205 to 210 frames per second, and that's on the agency level during competition mode offline. I'm sure when you're online it might drop a little bit. I'm hardwired for Ethernet, so that enables that to run a little bit faster. Otherwise, over 200 once it gets going. GTA 5 is a point where the CPU is actually still the bottleneck in this system. The GPU only runs at 70% on Grand Theft Auto 5, and it's still giving me around 90 frames per second in denser areas. In lighter areas, or if you're doing a flyover, it goes all the way up to 110 to 130 frames per second. Number one thing though is that it does not stutter. It's not waiting that much. Frame times are in the 3 to 4 millisecond range, which is not bad on a boogered together system. Yes, I know there are $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 systems out there that have 2 millisecond timings on their frame rates, but they're also running $1,000 graphics cards, $1,000 processors, motherboards that cost twice as much as this entire build. And for those people, great, good for you. I wish I was one of you, but I'm not. I'm a budget builder. As a mid-level gamer, I'm not a competitive gamer, although I could definitely do esports at this because 200 frames per second is plenty. If I was running a 1440 or a 144 hertz refresh panel, that would be plenty. But for the games I play, I like to play at 1080p. I like to play at medium to high settings because I don't need ultra settings. I'd rather have an immersive storyline with a good frame rate than to see every single pimple that's been animated. Yes, I give credit to the studios for doing that kind of detail work, but it's not necessary to engross yourself. If the game is good enough, you don't care about the visuals. So that's about it. That is my February-March build, and it is pretty damn good in my opinion. You can play any of the entry-level games you want to play. CSGO, League of Legends, Dota 2, Overwatch. I got to get a few of those for testing purposes. I just never got them because I didn't care about playing them. But this computer can easily play them, and play them well. And that's the point. And I look forward to actually continuing this series because I like to find bargains. I like to build them. I like to mix components that normally wouldn't be mixed and see what I come up with. So give me a thumbs up if you like that. Give me a thumbs up if you like this computer. Give me any suggestions you might have for cheap parts that I might consider looking at. I'm thinking about doing an all AMD build. I even have an old Athlon processor sitting up there. I was thinking about putting that into a board and seeing if I could bring one back to life, but I don't think I have any DDR2 RAM laying around. But that would be kind of funny. If you aren't subscribed, please make sure to do so. If you'd like to watch another video, click over here. And if you'd like to contribute to the channel via Patreon or even just sending something to me to use in a build or to review, anything like that, I will leave my contact information in the About section, and you could always just send me a private message. And until next time, I'll talk to you later.